Yes or no, did you lead an audit? Do you not know this answer?
Senator, every
Yes or
part
no?
of my leadership
Yes
of these
or no?
organizations
Yes
has
or
been
no, did you lead an audit?
misrepresented
I will
from
take
top
that as
to
a
bottom.
no. What were the findings? So there were no findings because you've never led an audit.
That was only the beginning. During this confirmation hearing, Senator Tammy Duckworth repeatedly challenged Pete Hegseth on management experience, Pentagon oversight, international security agreements, and whether he possessed the qualifications necessary to lead the Department of Defense. As the questioning intensified, the exchange moved beyond policy disagreements and became a direct debate over competence, preparation, and leadership. Watch the full confrontation and decide for yourself.
Also, Secretary Mattis had to have this waiver as well. Mr. Hegseth, this hearing is about whether you are qualified to be Secretary of Defense, and one of the qualifications, to answer my colleague's question, is to actually win the votes of every member of this committee and to be confirmed by the United States Senate. And you need to convince us that you're worthy of that vote, because the people of the state of Illinois voted for me to be their senator so that I could cast that vote when it comes to picking who is going to be the next Secretary of Defense. This hearing now seems to be a hearing about whether or not women are qualified to serve in combat, and not about whether or not you are qualified to be Secretary of Defense. And let me just say that the American people need a SecDef who's ready to lead on day one. You are not that person. Our adversaries watch closely during times of transition, and any sense that the Department of Defense that keeps us safe is being steered by someone who's wholly unprepared for the job puts America at risk, and I am not willing to do that. With that in mind, Mr. Hegseth, I want you to try to explain to the American people, this committee, who have to vote for you, and to our troops who are deployed around the world, why you are qualified to lead the Department of Defense. We already know that you've only led the largest, a 200-person organization. We already know that you so badly mangled a budget that after you left, they had to bring in a forensic accountant to figure out what went wrong, and that the largest budget you ever managed was about $18 billion. You know, that is about 51,560 times lower than the Department of Defense budget of $825 billion. $16 million is 51,568 times smaller than the defense budget. Please describe to me, Mr. Hegseth, you talk about DOD passing an audit. Please describe to me a time or an organization when that you led underwent an audit, because you say you're going to hire smarter people than you to run this audit. I'm not asking you to be an accountant. I want you to be able to tell me what kind of guidance will be given to those employees, what will happen whether or not you pass that audit. Have you led an audit of any organization, yes or no? I don't want a long answer, yes or no. Have you led an audit of any organization of which you were in charge?
Senator, in both of the organizations I ran, we were always completely fiscally responsible.
Yes or no, did you lead an audit?
And the way
yes
my leadership
or no, did you lead an audit?
Stated,
yes or no?
Completely
what are you afraid of? You
mischaracterized.
can't answer this question. Yes or no, did you lead an audit? Do you not know this answer?
Senator, every
yes or
part
no?
of my leadership
yes
of these
or no?
organizations
yes
has
or
been
no,
misrepresented
I will take
from top
that as
to
a
bottom.
no. What were the findings? So there were no findings because you've never led an audit. What guidance did you give the auditors? None, because you've never led an audit.
At this point, the focus of the hearing was not military service, but management experience. Senator Duckworth was trying to determine whether leadership of smaller organizations translates into overseeing the Pentagon, which manages one of the largest budgets and workforces in the federal government. The repeated audit questions were designed to test familiarity with accountability and oversight responsibilities.
Nobody expects you to be an accountant, Mr. Hegseth. What we expect is for you to understand the complexity of this Pentagon budget process that is absolutely necessary to outfit our warfighters. Look, the Secretary of Defense is required to make quick decisions every single day with high-level information that's being provided for them. A Secretary of Defense has to have breadth and depth of knowledge. Right now, I am concerned that you have neither. Mr. Hegseth, what is the highest level of international negotiations that you have engaged in, that you have led in? Because the Secretary of Defense does lead international security negotiations. There are three main ones that the Secretary of Defense leads and signs. Can you name at least one of them?
Could you repeat the question, Senator?
Sure. What is the highest level of international security agreement that you have led? And can you name some that the Secretary of Defense would lead? There's three main ones. Do you know?
I have not been involved in international security arrangements because I have not been in government other
Okay.
than serving in the military. So my job has been
So
to
no, the
lead
answer is no.
men
Can
and
you
women
name
in
one of the
combat.
three main ones that the
If you're
Secretary
talking
of
about
Defense
defense
signs?
arrangements, I mean, NATO might be one that you're referring to.
Status of Forces Agreement would be one of them.
Status of Forces Agreement. I've been a part of teaching
So-
about Status of Forces Agreements.
But you don't
inside-
remember.
The discussion now shifts from budgeting and administration to international security responsibilities. A Secretary of Defense regularly works with allies, negotiates military cooperation arrangements, and participates in strategic defense planning. The questions here are intended to test familiarity with those responsibilities rather than battlefield experience alone.
To mention it, you're not qualified, Mr. Hegseth. You're not qualified. You talk about repairing our defense industrial complex. You're not qualified to that. You could do acquisition and cross-servicing agreements, which essentially are security agreements. You can't even mention that. You've done none of those. You talked about the Indo-Pacific a little bit, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact
No, you
amount of
couldn't,
nations in
because you've
that,
not
but I
even
know we have
bothered to
allies
do-
in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia, and trying to work
Okay.
on submarines with them. and
Mr.
data
Hegseth,
transfers
none
with
of those
them.
countries
We
are
have
in
allies
ASEAN.
across.
None of those three countries that you've mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations.
This became one of the most talked about moments of the hearing because it centered on foreign policy knowledge and regional security issues. The Indo-Pacific region has become increasingly important to U.S. defense strategy, making knowledge of alliances, partnerships, and regional organizations a major part of modern defense leadership.
Listen, Mr. Hegseth, we ask our troops to go into harm's way all the time. We ask them to go into harm's way. And this behind me is a copy of the Soldier's Creed, a copy that usually hangs over my desk here in the Senate, and you should be familiar with it. It's the same copy that hung over my desk at Walter Reed every single day that I woke up and fought my way back because I wanted to go back and serve next to my buddies who'd saved my life. This same copy, these words are repeated over and over and over again. And let me read out two things to you, two sentences. I will always place the mission first, and I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough, trained and proficient in my warrior task. Mr. Hegseth, our troops follow these words every single day, and they man up and they pack their rucksacks and they go to war. And they deserve a leader who can lead them, not a leader who wants to lower the standards for himself or raising the standards for other people. And by the way, our troops already meet the standards. We ask troops to man that ship, fight that fire, fly that helicopter until their very last breath. And they do that every single day. They cannot be led by someone who's not competent to do the job. How can we ask these warriors to train and perform the absolute highest standards when you are asking us to lower the standards to make you the Secretary of Defense simply because you are buddies with our president-elect? And by the way, he has filed for bankruptcy 6 times. I'm not quite sure he's the kind of CEO you want to refer to as a successful businessman. Let me make it clear. You can't seem to grasp that there is no U.S. military as we know it without the incredible women that we serve. Women who've earned their place in their units. You have not earned your place as Secretary of Defense. You say you care about keeping our armed forces strong and that you like that our armed forces are meritocracy, then let's not lower the standards for you. You, sir, are a no-go at this station.
The hearing concluded with a broader argument about standards, accountability, and leadership. Rather than debating a single policy issue, the discussion focused on whether the expectations placed on military personnel should also apply to those seeking to lead them. This ultimately became one of the defining themes of the confirmation process. This exchange became one of the most widely discussed moments of Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing because it focused on a question that often defines cabinet nominations. What qualifications are necessary to lead one of the largest and most complex institutions in the federal government? Senator Tammy Duckworth approached her questioning from the perspective of management, oversight, military leadership, and international security experience. Throughout the exchange, she repeatedly returned to the idea that the Department of Defense is not simply a military organization, but a massive institution responsible for global operations, hundreds of billions of dollars in annual spending, and relationships with allies around the world. One major area of focus involved audits and financial accountability. For years, lawmakers from both parties have raised concerns about Pentagon financial management and the challenges associated with tracking spending across such a large organization. Duckworth's questions attempted to determine whether Hegseth had experience overseeing audits or managing organizations with similar administrative complexity. Her argument was that military leadership alone may not fully prepare someone for the financial and organizational responsibilities of the position. The hearing then shifted toward international security, agreements, and foreign policy knowledge. Modern secretaries of defense play a central role in maintaining military partnerships, coordinating with allies, participating in multinational security initiatives, and advising presidents on global threats. Understanding how these relationships function is considered a critical part of the job because military readiness increasingly depends on cooperation with partner nations. The ASEAN exchange became particularly notable because it highlighted the importance of regional organizations in U.S. strategy. ASEAN serves as a key diplomatic and economic grouping in Southeast Asia and plays an important role in discussions involving regional stability, maritime security, trade routes, and great power competition. Successive administrations have emphasized the strategic significance of the Indo-Pacific region, making knowledge of its institutions and partnerships an important qualification for senior national security officials. Supporters of Hegseth argued that military service, leadership experience, and willingness to challenge Pentagon bureaucracy were strengths rather than weaknesses. They contended that many Americans wanted reform, greater accountability, and fresh leadership capable of addressing recruitment concerns, procurement delays, and inefficiencies within the defense establishment. Critics viewed the matter differently. They argued that managing the Department of Defense requires extensive experience coordinating large organizations, overseeing substantial budgets, interacting with foreign governments, and navigating highly complex security environments. Their concerns centered on whether the demands of the office required a broader administrative background than Hegseth had previously demonstrated. Another significant aspect of the hearing involved leadership standards. Duckworth repeatedly framed her criticism around the expectations placed on service members. Her argument was that military personnel are expected to meet strict performance standards, and that similar expectations should apply to those seeking to lead the institution. This theme became increasingly prominent as the exchange progressed and eventually formed the basis of her closing remarks. Historically, confirmation hearings serve as public examinations of both qualifications and judgment. Senators use these hearings not only to review a nominee's resume, but also to observe how that individual responds under pressure. The ability to answer difficult questions, explain past decisions, and demonstrate knowledge of key issues often becomes just as important as formal credentials. Looking beyond this specific exchange, the hearing reflected a broader debate that frequently appears in American government. One side emphasizes institutional experience, technical expertise, and years of management within large organizations. The other emphasizes leadership qualities, reform-minded thinking, and the value of bringing an outsider perspective into established systems. Both approaches have supporters, and both have shaped government appointments throughout U.S. history. Regardless of political viewpoint, this hearing demonstrated why confirmation proceedings attract significant public attention. They provide voters with an opportunity to see nominees challenged in real time and allow lawmakers to publicly examine whether candidates possess the knowledge, experience, and judgment required for positions of national importance. Ultimately, the exchange was about more than one nominee. It reflected larger questions about leadership, accountability, experience, and the standards Americans expect from those entrusted with overseeing national defense. Those questions remain relevant regardless of who occupies the office, which is why exchanges like this continue to generate public debate long after the hearing itself ends.